we need to say a massive thank you and hello to Paul, who's calling in from Prague, I presume. And he is here with us to talk about Ulysses Whiskey, the brand that he's created, and the story behind that. That's a really interesting, intriguing, and captivating story that I think will be really useful and interesting to our audiences. So, Paul, a massive welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. Tell me a little bit about you, Paul. You are born and raised in Dublin, but then you are now in the Czech Republic. How did home come to be Prague for you?
So it was August 1992 when we all moved to Prague. The family, that would be my mother, my father, my younger brother, my sister, and I. And it was the result of the Velvet Revolution that happened in November 1989. My father had been doing business out here before the revolution, and then after the revolution, it just made more sense that we'd all move here, we'd all be here together, so that he could really get his hands on the opportunities. And so that's why my parents made the decision. I was only 14 years at the time, so it wasn't really up for debate. We were told, that's it, pack the bags, we're going to Czechoslovakia. And then, of course, on January 1st, the Czech Republic and Slovakia, or Czechoslovakia split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And nobody saw that one coming. And it's not normal for countries to separate without a shot being fired. But both countries wanted it, so it was done.
Yes, mutual understanding and mutual agreement.
And
wow, what a change.
It was the best thing for both countries. Both countries have done very well. And the first couple of years here, I went to the German school for 2 years. That was a easy follow-on as I went to the German school in Ireland, which was called St. Kilian's. I'll get back to that later. And then it was 1 year in a new school called the English College. And then I decided to leave school 2 years before doing my leaving cert, because I was already in business. I was selling clothes, streetwear. Some people might know the brand Stussy. That's apparent, according to my kids, very cool now.
Oh, okay.
And I was importing that into the Czech Republic, age 14, 15, selling it to all the kids in the French school, the Russian school, the American school, the German school. And then
I love this.
After school, I'd go into town, take the tram into town with some duffel bags full of streetwear.
I can imagine this, actually. I can imagine this very clearly. You with like 2 sacks on the back going, I'm going to make some money today.
Yeah, because it was fun. It was fun going out and bringing something new to people that wanted to know, where did it come from? Where, these are clothes that we could see on people wearing on MTV, but you couldn't buy them anywhere else in Czechia. So I was already in business at the age of 14, and then my father managed to secure the Murphy's beer agency for the Czech Republic, and appointed me marketing and sales director at the age of 17. So that was fun. Obviously, I wasn't legally allowed to drink the stuff, but I was selling it. And as I said, I left school and I've been in the drinks trade ever since.
And that entrepreneurialism, that came from, I mean, not to take it away from you, but like there was definitely a role model in your father who had set up his own business. And it also in textiles, if I'm right in thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
All started with flannelette, if I understand this right.
Flannelette, pajamas, corduroy, curtain lining, pocket lining, all the good stuff. Also, I think some suits were made in, I can't remember, for some British company, I forget. But it was primarily, pajamas and the boring stuff. which the Czech textile mills were very, very good at making this long-lasting quality clothing that would then be cut and sewn in the UK and Ireland.
And so that's because I think I read in an interview that, and we've just chatted about earlier on today about, you have dyslexia. School wasn't always the easiest thing. And I just do find that the correlation between dyslexia and entrepreneurialism, whether this is an urban myth or not, I feel like you are a living example of someone taking their skills and actually harnessing it where those skills need to be. And clearly business is very akin to your skill set. And you've seen that over the last few years working for your dad and since then working with, managing brands. Now, I'm quite interested in this because you joined your dad at Murphy Stout, who took on the business, and since then you've been managing brands largely in the beer industry. So you've got names like Heineken, Bulmers as we know it in the UK, Carlsberg, Kopparberg. Like, that's some strong, high-profile brands that you were stepping into. What was that like?
It was counterintuitive. So 80-something% of the beer we drink around the world is Pils lager beer.
Yeah.
And it gets the name Pils from the Czech city of Pilsen. So it's a Czech invention. And Czech brewers make fantastic beer, absolutely world class. When brewers say around the world say they use the choicest hops in their brewing, they're talking about Žatec hops. That's a region in the Czech Republic, and that is you'd call it the champagne of hops, if you like. So we have the ingredients, we have the style, and we have the know-how to make fantastic beer in the Czech Republic. And then there was this uppity little Irishman, me, of course, who thought, no, I've got a better idea. Let's import an English version of a Czech invention with an Australian brand on it. And now I'm talking about Foster's. So I was importing Foster's and Heineken and Carlsberg and Grolsch and all the other brands that you mentioned. And people were telling me that I was nuts. Why was I doing this? Importing Pils lager beer from foreign countries into the country that invented it.
Yeah, what a challenge.
And actually, it was very well received. And by far, most of our beer was consumed by locals, by Czechs.
Yeah.
And it was very, very interesting learning experience for me, and I suppose the entire market that we kind of kicked off. I think at the beginning, there was the Guinness importer, and there was me with Murphy's and all the other beers. Now the market is awash with foreign brands. But it was interesting because to this day, if you go into a Czech pub, you wouldn't normally say, I want a Pilsner Urquell, or I want a Gambrinus, or I want a Kozel or something. You'll say, I want a beer.
Yeah, or I mean, I've been recently, and it was almost like, which one do you want, light or dark? You're just like,
yes,
what?
Yes. So exactly, I want a beer. Which one, light or dark? Light, dark. One person drinks dark at the table, and everybody else light. So we weren't competing with Czech beer in that sense. All that we needed to do was convince consumers to remember our brand. So people would go into a bar and they'd say, I want a Heineken. They didn't, if they ordered a Heineken, it wasn't because they wanted a fantastic thirst-quenching beer. They wanted a Heineken because they wanted a Heineken. So it started out from the very beginning, we learned that it is about the brand, and it's about what the brand stands for. And then can you find one bar at a time and then one customer at a time to understand, to slow down, to listen, to hear our story about the brand, and then to resonate with it and say, yeah, okay, I get it. Heineken means something to me, so I'm going to order Heineken. And then baby steps over, many, many years. In my case, it's been decades. you get a larger and larger tribe of people that will order your product by name because that is specifically what they want.
Yeah. And I guess in that sense, I mean, there are whole schools of thought of how we create that point of difference for each brand and how to generate that first recall so that, you know, the Heinekens or the Bulmers is that first thought of, I'm walking into a bar, I'm enjoying it with a friend. What do I want? I want a Heineken. That there's a lot of thought that goes behind that psychological recall of what goes behind a consumer purchasing intent. And so I'm really interested to see how how much of a challenge that was in terms of the thinking behind creating the dynamic where people are recalling Heineken and the campaigns behind that.
So we came up. It's a constant process, evolution, inventive, creative process where you try lots of different things. Not all of them are going to work. Those that do, you double down on and you do more of them. As an example, we did a campaign, could never do it again today. The world has changed, but this is the 1990s, so bear with.
Okay, put that caveat in.
And we called it Heineken Dive into Refreshment. So we got a 16-wheel truck and a bungee jumping company.
See where this is going.
I think it's right. A gigantic circular swimming pool, which we dressed up to look like a glass of Heineken with, you know, beer, the foam, the logo. And we got the fire brigade to fill up the swimming pool, and then we had people bungee jump into the glass of Heineken, and they'd actually be submerged, and then they'd come back out again, and, you know, wet hair and water going everywhere. What could be more refreshing than, you know, diving into a Heineken?
I love it. And in fact, the caveat of the 1990s, I think, doesn't matter here. If that rolled out tomorrow, apart from the health and safety issues potentially.
See, Red Bull could probably do it. I'm not sure if, you know, an Alco brand could do it today. I don't think Heineken
Yes,
would.
quite right.
Now. But, you know, that was fantastic fun. And of course, we did after parties and clubs around town where we built swimming pools inside them. And we all just went out in our bikinis and swimming togs and beach parties. And that was not how Czech beer was being sold.
Yeah. So it's a complete differentiator.
Yes. So we were standing out. And that's I think, of course, you know that Stranger and Stranger are doing our packaging for Ulysses. I think their slogan is don't fit in, stand out. So that's it. You know, that's an ethos. If you want to be remembered or memorable, remarkable, probably one of my favorite words in the English language, that one, remarkable. That is that you make a mark and somebody else remarks on your mark.
Yes, absolutely.
If you can be remarkable, then you will get that tribe, you will get that following, you will succeed.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to commanding that voice in the market, because experiential marketing, like you've just shared an example of, it is exactly a scenario that generates interest, that generates discussion. Did you see that? Was that real? Did I actually see a massive pool of beer around the corner? That conversation commands more voice, and that voice is what helps you generate that almost chaos that allows people to generate interest and be remembered. And it's maintaining that as well, which I think is really interesting. That's a one-off event that needs to be repeated, because we can just as easily forget a brand as we can to remember it. So very interesting indeed. And I can imagine in this day and age, a budget would need to be quite healthy for that to ensue. So any of our listeners out there who are on a startup budget and thinking, oh my goodness, is this actually what we need to be contending with? No, but it is just one idea of inspiration out there. Am I right, Paul?
You are right. It was kind of expensive. It was a lot. It was a lot of fun. I have to say, as much fun as it was a 3-day event at the international skateboarding competition in Prague. It rained all 3 days.
Ouch. Okay, that's watered down Heineken.
But yeah, what you want to have is, I think you touched on it there, is you want to have a flywheel of activations, events, things that your brand stands for, where you're constantly reminding people that you exist and why you exist. You're constantly telling people, I'm not just a product. I have purpose, and there's a product. And this is what I've been doing for the last 25 years for other people's brands, for all the ones that we just mentioned. But I also, I was the importer for William Grant & Sons for their private label business. And because of that relationship, we actually got to launch Hendrick's Gin in the Czech Republic, which I think, if I'm not wrong, Hendrick's was launched in the UK and then duty free, and the Czech Republic was the first market after duty free.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was very, very small when it was launched. They did everything right with that brand.
Yeah, they have.
They really tested it, and it was baby steps. And then we also launched Sailor Jerry Rum with William Grant's. We had the Cooley whiskey portfolio, so Kilbeggan, Greenore, Connemara, and Tyrconnell, Davidoff Cognac, and some other brands. So it wasn't only beer and cider. We also did spirits.
That's really interesting, because that leads me on to my next question, where I'm very curious as to the parallels or the incongruences of the beer industry and moving across to applying that thinking, that flywheel, that brand resonance into the spirits world. Are there just parallels, or are there things that are remarkably different? You've put the word in my head now, remarkable.
I would say it's the same when it comes to having people talk about your brand, or just slow down, get their attention, and take notice, and then you can start the conversation. So Hendrick's was a lot of fun. We really, I understood exactly what they wanted to do from day one. It was supposed to be a brand that had attitude, fun, quirkiness. So we leaned into that immediately. We were making custom installations for the best cocktail bars in Prague.
Excellent.
With local artists that where the owner of the bar wanted to hang something on his wall, and that was an original piece of art, and gave it pride of place, and then spoke to his bar staff about it, who then would talk to customers about it, and that was that worked with the whole cucumber serve and talking up the Bulgarian rose petals in it, and it got the conversation going.
Yeah.
And we're so it's there's 25 years of experience doing that for other brands, and then I thought came to the conclusion that if I want to own my destiny, I have to own my own brand, otherwise I'm just working for other people. So that's how I arrived at Ulysses.
Absolutely. Well, a great segue into Ulysses, and which of course you started from scratch. You've alluded to it a little bit, but was it always in the back of your mind to do your own thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So over the years, whilst I had the Heineken agency, unfortunately I lost that, even though we did a fantastic job with it. Heineken bought a regional brewer, BBAG, based out of Austria, but they owned a brewery in the Czech Republic. And after a year, they then wanted to have the Heineken brand. Whilst we had Carlsberg, they then did a global deal with Budvar. So suddenly Budvar became their distributor in the Czech Republic. William Grant's decided to take the brands to the next level, which is a polite way of saying, thank you so much for what you've done. We're now going to let somebody else make money out of it. So it was, if you're an importer distributor, you are going to become a victim of your own success. It's only a question of when.
Yeah.
So the only way to own your destiny is to own your own brand. So I looked at, will I launch a beer or a cider or a gin or a vodka? And I had lots of ideas. But then finally I had a eureka moment with Ulysses. And since then, I've poured all of my my passion and my quirky ideas into it, and I have got the most amazing flywheel of activities that we're going to release into the world over the next 18
Well,
years.
I'm excited to delve into what this flywheel looks like if you are open to sharing a little bit of a snippet of what that involves. But let's start with Ulysses. It's an idea. It's an idea you've obviously been working on for a while, because the amount of detail that I'm already getting from the thinking, the considerations, and how that transpires into all the different considerations in packaging, storytelling, marketing. I'm so excited that you're on and joining us, because this is such an unusual perspective that you'll be sharing. Where did the idea come from at the very beginning? Ulysses Distillery. How did that come about?
So there isn't a distillery.
Okay.
So I suppose you could say, in part by necessity, the idea came about because I wanted to launch my own brand. I just didn't know what. And then sticking with the word necessity, being the mother of invention, I wanted to do something that would work, that would succeed. Most new drinks brands don't. The vast majority, 99.999% of new drinks brands, don't see their 5th birthday.
That's interesting.
And so it's, the mortality rate is horrific. So if I'm going to do this, how do I not fail? So it really has to be a good story, good liquid, and totally different to what everybody else is doing. So if everybody else is zigging, we must zag.
Absolutely.
And how do you...
Sorry, Paul, just before we go into the zigging and the zagging, you outlined that really clearly. A great liquid, a great story, and distinctive. Something that can be positioned very clearly. Is that where you say those other 99% of distilleries or brands don't see their 5th anniversary? Is that the lacking in one of those items that's missing?
Certainly. I mean, obviously, anybody would tell you you need luck.
Yeah.
Let's be blunt about it. If you have bad luck, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter how good your idea is, how much money you've thrown at it. If you've got bad luck, that's it. You're Schluss aus Ende.
It's awful to think about this.
But it's true. So you need, obviously you need luck. And if you haven't got that, the whole thing is for naught. But I firmly believe that you have to have a combination of a genuinely good product. You need to package it well. It needs to have a good story, and you need to be good at telling that story. And then you have a reasonably good chance of not failing. And that's not the same thing as succeeding. And then let's see, what success is for me and for others.
Absolutely.
So with that formula in mind of how are we going to do this and not fail, I thought, okay, what are our restrictions? We're not a multinational. We don't have unlimited amount of money. So investing into our own distillery is a non-starter. Okay, but is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Not if we, as an example, align ourselves with the very best distillers out there who are tremendously passionate about what they do, unreasonably passionate about what they do, have been in business for some time. So they're not going to go bust. I don't need to worry about that. And my customers, my patrons don't need to worry about that. And then, so that's the product. What about the packaging? Well, I have to work with the best of the best of the best. Otherwise, I could only blame myself later if it didn't work, if the packaging wasn't loved. So that was easy, stranger and stranger. And they understood it from day one.
Yeah.
I met with them in London, I guess it could have been 11 or 12 years ago. I explained what I wanted to do, and they said, love it. Okay, tell us when you're ready. Fast forward a decade.
That is some great lead time.
Right? I didn't have the time or the money, bandwidth to do it 11, 12 years ago. Even though we received a pretty nice offer from a venture capital firm that was set up by one of the largest drinks companies in the world. They made us an offer, but just wasn't the right place, the right time, didn't have the bandwidth for it. So didn't take their money. And I own Ulysses outright, and it's been only my money going into it. But I'm very, very happy with the result.
Okay, well, we're going to delve into all the elements that you chatted about, but the story, of course, when you mentioned Ulysses to me, I think immediately the book. And yes. I immediately think about the difficulty of that book and the notoriety of how it's a difficult book to read, but a very a historical book that's built on heritage and literary history. How did that come to be an inspiration for you? Or was it? Am I just making assumptions and they're totally unrelated?
No, you're right. You're certainly on the right track. So I would say Ulysses Whiskey art, what we are, this project that I've put together, which I fondly call an international collaborative art project, ... and whiskey, is so the idea there is, or the inspiration is, of course, James Joyce and the book Ulysses, the characters in the book, and the story there. So Joyce based it on Homer's Odyssey. There's 18 episodes, chapters, if you like. Joyce called them episodes. And it is there loosely based on this journey. But instead of a journey from ancient Greece over many years, it is one day in Dublin with a handful of core characters and then more than 100 extras, if you like. That where the star of the book, if you like, is Leopold Bloom. Yeah. And he goes out walking through Dublin with friends and acquaintances, and he doesn't want to go home because he knows his wife is at home having an affair with somebody. So he's out on the town for the night. And there is that, and I would say 20% of our story is Ulysses, the novel. Then I'd say 30% of it is the times in which Joyce lived, what was happening in the world at the time, what was happening to him and around him that inspired him to write the novel in the first place. And
I see.
that was a fascinating time in European history, world history. And then how difficult it was to have the book published, where it was banned, by whom, why, the trials, literally, that Joyce and his publicists had to go through to have the book unbanned. People that went to prison because they were, reading it. It's just truly fascinating. And then I'd say the other half, the remaining 50% of our story is how we're celebrating this. How we're celebrating the novel and the characters in the novel through Bloomsday. How we're celebrating the times in which Joyce wrote the novel, the grit of the man for getting the thing done, and all the people around him that helped him. And then let's do that together, literally together. Let's meet. And then it kind of all fell into place. Then this flywheel of activities just became so obvious what we should be doing. If I can tell you about that, I think it becomes self-explanatory. So the book was first published on Joyce's 40th birthday, literally the day of, 2nd February 1922, in Paris. Joyce wrote the book when he lived in Trieste, and then Zurich, and then finally in Paris. It's been translated into more than 30 languages around the world. Most translations, there's only one. A couple of translations, there's two totally separate translations. And there's one translation where there's three different, completely different translations. That's Japanese, by the way. Lost in translation, quite literally. So I thought to myself, okay, right, obviously we need the liquid. Now, where are we going to get the liquid from? Should it be an Irish whiskey only because Ulysses the book?
Yep.
Or should we do things the way Joyce did it himself? That sounded like a bit more fun. So Joyce started writing it in Trieste and then Zurich and Paris. Okay, we should have an Italian whiskey because of Trieste. We should be celebrating this place where he was inspired to start writing the book. We should have a Swiss whiskey because of Zurich, which is also where Joyce is buried. We should have a French whiskey because the book was first published by Shakespeare and Company in Paris. Of course, we should have an Irish whiskey because the story takes place in Dublin and Joyce was originally Irish. And then, let's look at all the translations of it. The first translation was German. We should have a German whiskey. In fact, the German whiskey should come out on the centenary of the German translation. And the French will come out on the centenary of the French translation. The Czech whiskey will come out on the centenary of the Czech translation, and the Japanese on the centenary of the Japanese translation. And we will have an American whiskey in 2034 to celebrate the centenary of the overturning of the ban of Ulysses in the US.
That's mental.
Remarkably, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Remarkably, the ban on Ulysses, even though it was banned for 12 years, the ban on Ulysses was overturned the day after Prohibition was overturned.
Oh, interesting.
Literally 24 hours later. And the ban, again, was going on for 12 years, and the court case was going on for many, many months. It was just total accident that Prohibition was overturned 24 hours later. The ban on Ulysses was overturned.
Absolutely.
And that was in December 1933. In January 1934, James Joyce was on the front cover of Time magazine, not a bottle of Jack Daniels or something. Joyce was celebrated.
That's incredible. So these key anniversaries then become part of your flywheel, your plan of your rollout. And I mean, all of us, I don't think many people who are planning their brand are planning 18 years in advance, which is such a unique perspective. But how do you bring this all together that all of a sudden you start to go, right, you're riffing, you start to see these ideas. Well, wouldn't it be a good idea? How do you bring that all together in terms of, well, what does that mean now? Where do I find this liquid that's going to really do each of these bottles and these anniversaries justice?
Excellent question. So I start off with, and it wasn't always like this. I found my way to this process. And then as soon as I discovered the process, if you like, it made perfect sense. This is what I should have been doing from the beginning, and I'd probably be a lot further down the road had I have just done it this way to begin with. Okay, so the process is, would Joyce have done it?
Okay.
And if the answer is yes, then the second question is, okay, can I do it? Is it actually possible to do? And if it passes the first test and it passes the second test, then I do my darndest to get it done.
Yeah.
So I've been traveling the world in the last couple of years, meeting distillers here, there, and everywhere, trying to convince them to join me. And there hasn't been one that has said no. Not one. So it's been a lot of fun. And our distiller partners totally understand what we're about. They understand that it is a project where the sum is greater than, crikey, what's the figure of speech? The sum is greater
than its parts. Yeah.
And they are all making a contribution to this international collaborative art project. So then I thought, okay, what other kind of inspiration can we get from Joyce? So Ulysses, when it was first published, there was 1,000 copies. If I recall properly, 750 were made on this beautiful paper from a French paper mill called Arches that was established in 1492. It's actually still in business today.
Wow.
1492 is the year that Columbus, quote unquote, discovered America. And that company is still in business, as I said. So we are going to use that paper in our packaging as our certificate, if you like, for when you buy a bottle.
Wow.
And you will have it from this same paper that the first copy of Ulysses was printed on, from this magnificent French paper maker.
That's incredible.
So the attention to detail is, it's insane, but I enjoy it. And that's also what Stranger and Stranger brought to the table. Their approach to the packaging has just been a joy and a pleasure to watch. I mean, every time we get on a call, I'm smiling from ear to ear as they explain to me their thinking. And what they came up with was this design language that they would use over the course of the next 18 years, where you would clearly see each label is different for the 18 episodes, but you would clearly see the DNA throughout the series. And the idea with the first label is a collage of images brought together that explain what's happening in the first episode. And you can see the original Martello Tower on the label, where the book opens up in Dublin with a fake mass being held by Buck Mulligan, who's described as having a head equine in shape. So we thought, okay, he's got to have a horse's head. And then I challenged, and this is what Stranger came up with. And the tower itself is on a pulpit, and that, it's not just any old pulpit. It's literally the pulpit from the small chapel from Clongoweswood College where James Joyce went as a boy.
Wow.
And the horse's head, when Stranger did the first mock-up, it was a horse's head. And I said, okay, but who's the horse? And I said, we don't know. We just found this art. And I said, well, it's a brilliant idea, but we should find the right horse for it. So we did. We found an Irish horse called Troy Town that won the Grand National and the French, whatever their Grand National is, in, I think, 1920 and 1921. So when Joyce was still writing Ulysses, this Irish horse was winning everything it entered, partly because all the French and British, all good French and British horses were dead because of the First World War, but also this was a famous Irish horse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the attention to detail is just manic.
And creating those layers as well. So it's like what you initially see, but on further thought, on further thinking, and particularly if this is becoming a collection, you start to become in on the secrets of the label and what that means. And that in itself creates discussion.
Exactly. And this is why I call it an international collaborative art project, because we have, the distillers, they're artisans. Stranger and Stranger, they're artists.
Absolutely.
Joyce was an artist. And I'm not saying that I am, but I am saying I'm trying. I kind of see myself as, we have the distillers as the brass band. We have Joyce's inspiration. So he's the music. And I'm up at the front as the conductor, just doing my best of, I don't know if you hear it the same way I hear it, but let's make some music here. So the idea is 18 whiskies over the course of 18 years, named for the 18 episodes of Ulysses, with a new release every year on June the 16th, so Bloomsday, the day on which the entire book takes place. The first release is 5,000 bottles. That's 5,000 bottles for the whole world and all time. There'll never be any more. And then every following year, it's 250 bottles less. So in the final year, we should have only 750 bottles. But we're having a bit of fun here. The whiskey that's going into the first bottling is going to be the same whiskey that's going into the final bottling, except it'll be aged 18 years longer in wood. Whereas the first bottling is in glass, it's inert. It'll be 18 years older, but it will not have aged, matured, changed. Whereas the whiskey that we're putting back into wood after the first bottling, it will evaporate, unpunctuate. It will go through its own stream of consciousness, which, if anyone has read Ulysses, will know Joyce deployed throughout, but especially in the final episode, Penelope, where it ends with Leopold Bloom making love to his wife and with her screaming in ecstasy, yes, I will, yes. So this is how we're going to end our little whiskey project, screaming in ecstasy with actually not 750, but 732 bottles. You got to give the angels their share to match the number of pages that were in the book when it was first published in 1922.
See, and I did forewarn everyone who's listening to this podcast that the intricacy and considerations that have been put into, and I know a lot of this has riffed, and wouldn't that be a good idea? But when you take a step back and you see that every detail matters, that's pretty phenomenal achievement, Paul. And I think we are on the cusp of you launching your first bottle, which is why this is so exciting. And when this podcast is aired, we'll probably be days away from that launch, which I think is even more exciting for us that we're part of this journey in a little small way. But I think it's just incredible. And the story of Ulysses must have not just the stories, but the James Joyce and the history must resonate with you so intrinsically that you know every detail. And there's a passion that's coming through. Where has that really come from for this, for bringing James Joyce to life?
I fear we're only scratching the surface. I've put 11, 12 years into this, of, let's call it research, I'm only at the beginning. It just keeps giving. There's no end to it. This is you go down one rabbit hole and you discover, so many more warrens, and it's never ending. I told you about the paper from Arches.
Yeah.
So I was going down one rabbit hole, and I ended up at Halton Library at Harvard University. And I discovered, as you do, I discovered that they have the original placards of the book before it was published. The printer had these large, like A1 in size today, sheets of paper that had 4 pages on the sheet. And the way that you do it is the printer would put out the text letter by letter. Remember, 732 pages. And only one person at the printer spoke English. Everybody else spoke French. So they didn't even know what they were, typesetting.
Yeah.
But letter by letter, they put it out. And then they would send it to the author, and the author would normally just, put their signature at the bottom saying, yeah, that's fine, back to the printer. They'd print them, and then they'd cut these large posters, and you'd have your 4 pages, and then they'd bind the book, and off you go. Joyce went through a process of, I think it was 3 or 4 times, he sent back these placards to the printer, taking words out and adding paragraphs to pages. Which meant that they had to change pages a couple before and a couple after, again, letter by letter, to make space for these new paragraphs. So we, the Halton Library at Harvard, have these original placards with handwritten notes of Joyce, and they've supplied us with scans of them.
Wow.
And we are going to recreate those at a printer in Prague that is also going to put the words together letter by letter, and then on old Heidelberg presses print them out with Joyce's handwritten notes, and these will also be limited editions, but and of course they will be printed on the Arches paper with their
that's amazing
watermarks.
And form part of the bottle. Is that what you're?
This is your certificate if you want to hang it up on on the wall of your Irish bar, wherever it is in the world.
It's incredible.
But it is. There's inspiration everywhere we look. It's obvious to do this. Obvious as it is that if our whiskey is coming 1 year from a distiller in Italy, and the next France and Japan and Norway and England and Scotland and the US and the Czech Republic and Germany, well, obviously we should be meeting at these distillers on Bloomsday. I mean, of course we should. Where else would we be? So if you are a customer, a patron of this international collaborative art project, if you buy a bottle, you are invited on this, tour of distilleries around the world. So if you, feel free to tell your partner that they should consider you gone June the 16th for the next 18 years, because you're going to be visiting distillers around the world.
And not to find that very weird.
Exactly. Talk about fair warning.
You touched on this, which is exactly what I wanted to explore. Was it's small batch, like you mentioned. We're starting off with 5,000 bottles. We're reducing that with bottling 250 less at each annual iteration, down to, and there's significance of that. They're each priced at €1,000.
Yep.
Do you think, I mean, you touched on it with community, but do you think your customer will purchase it with the intent to collect or to drink?
I hope we'll have both. I think, to me, what makes most sense is that somebody would get 3 bottles of each release. One to open and drink with friends. One to keep, collect, hold until the 18 years are over. And then you have this full collection, unopened. And one to trade. And if this is a success, again, as I said right at the beginning, the first thing we need to do is not fail.
Yeah.
And then there is a measure of what would be as a success for me is I create this tribe, this following that I can meet with each June the 16th for the next 18 years and have fun with while touring these distillers around the world. And then we get into the rarefied air of it actually becoming a remarkable commercial success. I do not know if that will happen, but we are setting it up so that it could. So you might reserve a bottle now for €1,000, and in a couple of years it might be worth a lot more. In which case you could sell it for, who knows, 2,000, 3,000 more than you paid when you reserved it. And in an ideal world, anyone who reserved 3 bottles of each and then decided that they were going to sell that 3rd bottle of each, it would pay for the other ones. It would pay the ones for the ones that they collected and the ones that they opened. So they're in it for free.
You were really at the beginning of we think we've got the 18 years sussed, but we have no idea what's coming our way. And I'm very, very intrigued as to how that all unfolds. I have no doubt and full confidence in this survival stage of your new brand. But I must admit, I'm incredibly grateful for you just spending the last hour with us and sharing what I feel is only scratching the surface of the research and the storytelling that you that has come to fore with Ulysses Whiskey, and makes total sense that it's whiskey with its adaptability, with its complex flavoring, to represent the story, the nuances of James Joyce's story as well as the book itself. And I'm grateful for you having such an innovative idea 10 years ago and sticking to it to reveal something really quite complex and really wonderful to understand. And I hope anyone who's listening to this podcast understands that they can find out more through your website and start thinking about whether they want to become patrons. But equally, I think the thinking and the considerations behind building a brand and what that looks like in a bottle. And I have no doubt why you contacted Stranger & Stranger. They're great friends of ours, and we're very much an advocate for the talent that they have in terms of telling that story and turning something so complex into something so visual and intriguing. I'm grateful. Thank you for your time,
Thank
Paul.
you very much. It's been a pleasure to be on your podcast. I hope we talk again soon.
Absolutely. Well, that has to be a promise. Is we've got 18 years ahead. We'll need to plan a check-in.
Definitely. I look forward to it.
For sure. Until then.